All right, awesome, everybody. So yeah, welcome to the weekly recap stream and the plan stream. Basically going to go over how the market is setting up going into next week, as well as into the month. We are getting into a new month, so obviously the month of March. And just remember, when you have a new month, there's always new flows because institutions, funds, they're always rebalancing their positions. So you'll get new strength leaders, new weakness leaders, and stuff like that every single month. We also had a ton of flows into crypto, obviously, because of the announcement for Trump making a Federal Reserve for cryptos, including in that crypto list is like Solana, ADA, XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum. So all those are getting some really good flows. So that would be a really nice theme to watch going into next week. There's a few crypto stocks that are pretty oversold: MSTR, Mara, Riot, those type of names. So always know what's going on in the market, what the themes are, all that good stuff. Helps you kind of get an idea of where you should focus in the market. And to me, that's going to be a big spot to look at. However, the markets are still in a downtrend, right, on the bigger time frame. So let's always start with the markets, kind of look at the analysis of what's going on. You want to look at the S&P, QQQ, IWM, DIA, just so you can kind of get an idea of where the markets are and how we can execute on some trades. So we are below the moving averages on the S&P, but we're very close to the moving averages kind of reclaiming this spot, right? So for me, whenever we're trading at a key level, it's always going to be a very good opportunity. For example, last week we were trading right at this key level. We broke below, we caught the puts to the downside, we played a very nice move down, right? And then on Friday, we were overextended into the gap. We fully kind of filled the gap on Q, SPY, and we caught the reversal to the upside. So always know where the markets are. This can help you get an understanding of where to trade. I think the markets are coming into a very key spot, right? So what are some of the possibilities going into next week? Well, first of all, we are in a downtrend, so you do want to understand that markets should reject around this level here, right? However, that doesn't mean it has to happen. So we will be looking for a rejection to see if there's going to be weakness in the markets out of this spot, specifically on the S&P around 598 to 600. Obviously 600 on SPY is going to be a very key level. That's kind of like a whole number mental spot the markets have been trying to hold up. Once we broke that level, that's where the real downside move kind of began. So I'm going to be watching that spot. We also have all the EMAs stacked above. If we get over 600 and stay above, now we can look for potential move back up to the all-time highs on the S&P. That to me would indicate a reversal if we can stay over that level. So again, with key levels, you have very easy trades going into the week because you're trading at a very key spot. So it's either you get a big rejection or you get a reclaim and then a move to the upside. So we're looking at those two possibilities. And again, with trading, you never want to predict anything, right? It's all about trying to react to what the market does. Let the market show you what the direction of the market is going to be, and then we can react on some of the strongest or weakest names in the market depending on what the actual trend of the market is, right? Where the direction of the market is. So a lot of you are trying to predict the markets. That's not the way to trade. Let the markets give you a tactical reason to get into stocks. Let yourself be guided by probabilities, right? We always want to be in the best probability trade we can be in, and that's usually in the direction of the market. If the market's moving up, you don't want to be shorting. If the market's moving down, you do want to be shorting, right? You don't want to be longing stuff because the markets are guiding other stocks lower and higher. So always know the direction of the market, know those key levels. 600 is a level you definitely want to mark out on the S&P. Look to see how we react to the moving averages. If we reject, I'm looking to take things lower, and there's a few stocks that I like to the downside. There's also a few stocks I like to the upside, right? So we have a good mix of both. I think the market is pretty mixed. We do have some tariff talks out there. Going into March with US talking with Canada, Mexico, right? We have some of those talks. We got some news that potentially the tariffs might be less than 25%, but they're still going to be in effect. There was a delay in place until April. We'll see how that ends up playing out. Obviously, the market is going to be pretty uncertain and looking for those headlines. So be on the lookout for that as well. But those are going to be the key levels to trade around. So if we reject 598, 600 on the S&P, I'm just looking for a move back down to 583 and to fill the gap, potentially move all the way back down to 576, right? That would be the area to watch. That candle on Friday was very bullish on a ton of volume. We kind of got under previous day's low, reclaimed that spot, moved higher. That's called an RDR, and that obviously traps a lot of shorts here and then moves market the other way. But obviously we have a pretty tight range to trade from last week. So I would watch these two key levels at the lows, at the highs. Those are going to be our spots to watch. And from there, we can kind of make a decision on what the market is going to do. On the weekly time frame, it does look like the S&P did hold the 21 EMA. And if you could go back and really zoom out of this big trend that we've been putting in since we broke out here in 2023. The markets have loved to hold the weekly moving averages. So you can see we held the 21 day, held the 21 day, held the 21 day, held the 21 day, so far holding the 21 day. So as long as we continue to hold that spot on the weekly time frame, it does look like the weekly uptrend is still intact. If we get under this level here this week, 581, I would definitely be short all the way down to 562. So always watch the bigger time frames. If you're confused on what's happening in the market and there's not a lot of clarity, all you have to do is just step back a little bit, figure out what's happening on the bigger time frames. Okay, on the weekly, we're seeing that we're holding the weekly moving averages. That means there's a good chance on the daily, we might bounce a little bit because that's a big spot to watch. If we break under the key moving averages, like the 21 weekly EMA, that tells us that we're gonna go lower, right? We haven't tested this weekly 50 since this bounce right here back in October 30th. So that would be the spot to watch. So I'm watching those key levels. Going into the beginning of the week, it might be a little bit more uncertain because we do have a lot of mixed price action. Bitcoin is stronger, like financial stocks are stronger, industrials are stronger, but like tech stocks are weaker. So we'll have to see where the real flows in the market are going to be. But again, be prepared to trade either side. I'll have a plan for both ways. So I'll show you guys exactly what I'm looking at, but that's the key spot to watch. Now for tech, QQQ, we're obviously a little bit weaker on tech. We came all the way down to the January low right here and tested this spot. So far we undercut that, we're now bouncing a little bit off that level, and we're coming to retest the big breakdown spot from Thursday, right? So that would be right at 510. Okay, the ADMA is also coming down. So remember, if the markets are extended away from the moving averages, there's going to be a move in the other direction because that's called like a mean reversion, right? You come back to the mean, market's overextended. However, once the moving averages do catch up, and this usually occurs in a very strong trend, this is where the sellers are going to step back in. So you don't want to be shorting before the moving averages come down because that means you're overextended away from the moving averages, right? So the highest probabilities for a short now would be into the moving averages and catch this next leg to the downside. So what I like to look for in these type of scenarios is some sort of bear flag to form into the moving averages. You get a rejection at the highs and then continuation lower, and that would usually be on a ton of volume. So that's the type of setup I'm looking for this week. If that doesn't present itself, if we reclaim this level and stay above, then we could have a potential reclaim move to see higher, right? So that would be the level to watch. So I'm watching 510, 517.5. Those are my two levels to watch on QQQ. Again, remember which sectors have been strong, which sectors have been weak. Even though QQQ was up 1.5% on Friday, look at the S&P, right? The S&P usually doesn't move as much as tech, and it was almost up the same, right? So what does that tell us? Well, that tells us a lot of the strength was actually not in tech names. It was mainly in financial stocks, industrial stocks, healthcare stocks, the stocks that have been kind of like stronger when the rest of the market has been weaker, right? For example, let's look at XLF, which is the financial ETF. This one's at the all-time highs. It's literally trading at the highs, while SPY is still, a pretty good amount off the highs there. So that is relative strength. That is how you find strong sectors in the market. Let's look at XLV, which is the healthcare ETF. The healthcare ETF is making new highs as well, right? So if the healthcare ETF is making new highs, but the S&P is down here somewhere, that is showing you that there's relative strength in healthcare stocks. So that's how you find where the relative strength in the market is. And if the market continues to move higher, these are the sectors that we want to trade. So look at XLF, look at XLV, financials, look at something like oil, XLE, that's been a bit strong as well. So I'm going to show you guys the exact sectors I'm going to be watching, but that's how you have to approach the market. Know where the strong stocks were and have been, and continue to trade the strong names as long as the market goes up. If the market goes down, we trade the weak stocks, right? And what have the weak stocks been? Well, mainly SMH, right? If you look at semiconductors in general, you'll see that semiconductors have been really, really, really weak. Specifically SMH, which is the semiconductor ETF. This is breaking down out of the weekly base. You can see we had this big breakout. Since then, we continue to hold a 50 EMA, and going into like Friday, the end of Friday, we're kind of like right at the verge of losing this 50 EMA. So we're at a really key spot on semiconductors. I still think semiconductors are going to be a really great short to the downside. Maybe we do get a reclaim with the rest of the market. Never know, right? I'm not trying to predict what's going to happen, but I do have a really good plan in place in case there's going to be follow through to the downside. I think this is going to be a great short. And if you guys have seen something like SMCI, if you guys remember this, very similar setup, right? Whenever a stock starts to distribute, and starts to put in a top, you'll see very similar patterns occur. So you'll have like a pennant, it'll fail to break out, you'll get the big run to the downside, right? So that's what we're looking for on SMH. Very similar move. Same thing happened to ARK when it topped in 2021. It put in a pennant, it broke down, big move down, right? So I'm not saying SMH necessarily has to put in this move, but if the market is going to fall through to the downside, if there's going to be a lot more uncertainty, I do think semiconductors are going to lead lower, specifically because there's a lot of weakness in some of these semi names. For example, Nvidia is trading like right at the 50 EMA on the weekly, right? If we break that spot, that's going to be a lot of pressure on semiconductor stocks. If you look at semiconductor stocks in general, look at some of these, AMAT, for example, look at how much this one's off the highs, right? It's very, very weak. So we want to continue to trade the stocks that have been weaker, because if the market's bouncing, these are the ones that are going to be the weakest, right? So even though the market bounced a pretty good amount, none of these semiconductor stocks really bounced too much. They kind of just stayed on the weaker side. Even a few of them were kind of red, right? Like Dell, IBM, TSM, SMCI were all red, even though the market was bouncing on Friday. So that would be the sector you want to focus to the downside, right? So going back to QQQ, that's what I'm watching there. Same thing on tech with the EMAs, right? We're watching the 21 on the weekly to see if we hold that spot. And also look at this level we're at right now on Qs, right? We're retesting a big breakout from 2024. This was like the post-elections breakout where we had this pretty big move to the upside. We just retested that level, right? So as long as we hold, this is still a pretty valid structure that is holding right now, right? We tested it once, we held, tested it twice. Let's see if we hold, right? If we break under though, you guys know where the market's going, much lower, right? So that's what we'll be looking for to play potentially out in the next few weeks. If that plays out, I'm looking for a nice downside move to back to the 50 EMA. But again, what I'm trying to explain and what I'm trying to say is always be prepared to play either sides, especially when the stock market is at a very key level, right? Because if you have a key level break or a key level bounce, that's usually when the biggest moves are going to occur. So always be ready to play both sides, be open-minded, be objective, wait for the market to tell you what's going to happen, and then make decisions based off of that. That's how I approach the market, and I think that's the best approach to have, because if you don't approach it this way, you're going to have a ton of drawdown because you're going to be too biased going into the trading week or the trading month or whatever it is. So always be open to play either side. Don't be biased. Play on whatever the market is showing you. Your feelings don't matter. The market's always going to be right. So just try to trade off what the market is doing. Let's get into IWM really quickly, just so I could show you guys what's going on here. IWM is going to be a very key indicator to what's going to happen over the next few weeks, in my opinion. The reason why is because if you guys remember in 2021, when we started the bear market in 2022 with the Russia-Ukraine war on SPY and Qs, IWM kind of led the downside a little bit earlier. It was like 2 or 3 months earlier before the rest of the stocks, right? So you guys see like we topped out in November 2021. The S&P and Qs didn't really start moving lower until like December, January of 2022. So it kind of topped out about 2 to 3 months earlier. And we're kind of seeing the same thing play out here now, right? We rejected the same exact level in IWM, like right at this high. We started to come down around like November, and the market started to come down around January. So this was also like about 2 months early, right? So, and if you're looking, I mean, if you guys look at the chart, it looks almost identical. It's kind of scary. Like you see the big move down here into the 50, bounce, and then big move down again. We just put in a big move down into the 50, bounce, and I mean, we'll see if the big move down comes, but I mean, it's the same exact chart playing out right now on IWM. And I think this is going to give us keys to if the market's going to go lower. So if we don't hold here on IWM at like 212, 213, I think this is going to be a very, very big indicator of what's going to come for the markets. This is going to completely break down. Rest of the markets might head lower as well with it, right? But if it holds up and it kind of reverses and stays up, I think there's a good chance we can see a nice reversal. But again, the 50 is going to be the key, because remember, this is where it broke down in 2022, right? Once it broke that 50, this is really where the downside began. So if it breaks the 50, I suspect that there's going to be more downside. So watch that level. As always, guys, I always recommend putting a bunch of alerts on stuff. I put an alert here on 213, put an alert on previous week's low. If we break that spot, now you have confidence to short stuff, because you know that IWM breaking down is a very bad sign for the market and what's to come. So that's something to watch. The Dow is probably the strongest sector. This is one that I would watch if the markets are going to bounce. It's been holding up the best. Earlier here, it was kind of trying to break out, but it kind of pushed lower with the markets, but it's still very, very strong. Notice how the S&P Qs, IWM are all below the 82150 EMAs. Look at the Dow, right? It's above the 8 and it's above the 50. It's still below the 21, but it's kind of just chilling right at this spot. So if it gets back through 438, you can look for a move up to 446, 450, right? And that's a strong move on the Dow. That would be a really nice move on industrials, healthcare, financial stocks, consumer staples, right? Those type of sectors are usually the ones that benefit. So that's what I would be watching for moving forward. So watch the Dow, watch to see if there's going to be continuation there. That could be a really nice move. Now going into Bitcoin and the VIX, again, the Bitcoin is a very good kind of gauge to how risk on names move. And we did have that pop on the Trump news, the Trump administration news. And so far we're rejecting like right at this big spot at 95K. Right? So this, similar to IWM, I think is going to be a pretty big gouge to watch. If you look at the weekly time frame, that is a very, very impressive hammer that came off the 50 weekly EMA. You can see last time we kind of popped higher. Obviously this was post-elections, but I mean, the same kind of idea happened, right? We kind of printed a hammer off the 50, we kind of came back to test, and then we kind of blew higher. So that could potentially happen on Bitcoin. I think if Bitcoin holds up, the markets might want to follow, just because it has been a very good like gouge on how the markets have been moving. And the markets really kind of like to follow Bitcoin recently. So that's something to watch. Ideally, it would have to continue to hold this range. So somewhere around like 90K, you'd want to see it hold up. I'll be watching to see how this one develops out, how it stays up and stuff like that. It's not too important for like the equities market, but it's always a decent gouge to see like where the risk on players are. Are they in the market? Usually when Bitcoin's weak, the answer is no, right? When Bitcoin's strong, usually the answer is yes. So that's something to pay attention to. Next thing that's important as well is the VIX, right? This is one that we were talking about a lot last week. I said if we broke over 20 on the VIX, we're gonna get a big move to the downside on tech, which we did, right? Then the next day, we had a rejection off of the previous high on VIX, and the rest of the market bounced as well, right? So VIX is a good gauge on, let's say, like the fear in the market. Whenever the VIX is weaker, usually the markets do bounce. So these would be some key levels to watch. I would set my alerts over 22.51. If VIX does get over that level, we're gonna be in a very panic kind of fear state in the market, and I do think and I expect lower over that spot. So again, if you're looking for confirmations of where the market's going to go, use all these little things and all these little tools to build confidence to take these positions. If VIX breaks over 22.5, you're now going to have conviction that the market's going to move lower. Why? Because VIX is a very good gouge to fear in the markets. So if you have a lot of fear in the markets, usually that does lead to lower prices. So that's something I'm watching on VIX. Now, ARK is also one to watch for the same kind of idea as Bitcoin. We do have a little bit of an oversold potential move here. Very, very weak move on ARK. It was very strong about 2 weeks ago here when it was trying to break out, and then it just completely U-turned, came all the way back down, trapped a bunch of buyers here, and moved the other way. Obviously, Tesla, Palantir, Coinbase, these type of stocks have been leading the downside move for ARK because it is very like risk on names. However, again, if Bitcoin does change the narrative a little bit and give us a little bit of a reversal there in the risk names, this would be something to watch. So I'm paying attention to it. I'm watching this undercut level like 55.24. If we can hold somewhere around that spot, potentially we can get a reversal to the upside. This is just something we could potentially watch moving forward. All right, guys, so that's a little recap on the markets and what I'm watching. Obviously, a ton of information to digest, a ton of things to look at. However, the easiest way to approach this going into next week is, again, be open-minded to both sides. I have ideas for both ways on strong stocks, strong sectors, and weak stocks, weak sectors, right? That's what I'm going to be focusing on. So I'm looking to long the leaders, short the weak stocks in the market, see what the market does from there, how it develops, how it holds up, all that type of stuff. And again, remember, be patient, wait for the best setups in the market. We made a killing last week by just being patient, waiting for the strongest setups. We played both sides, we were open-minded. That's how you should approach things going forward, because that is how the market has been showing you that it's trading, right? In a strong market, when things just go up, you trade things just to the upside, right? But in a weaker market, when there's a lot of volatility and the markets aren't really certain where the direction is going to be, you need to be open to play both sides. Use the moving averages as a gap, kind of like a gauge to the direction of the market, the momentum, all that stuff. And then you can start to really pick up on some really nice moves. So that's going to be a little bit of a recap. I'll go into more sector specific stuff really quickly. What I like to always do is kind of see what sectors in the market are strong, which sectors of the market are weak, right? So what I noticed last week, we had a lot of strength in oil, XLE. A lot of these held up really nicely, and we do have really big bases in these. So this is XLE, energy, and oil held up pretty well. A stock like CVX to me looks very, very good. If you look at the weekly time frame, there's a huge base that's forming here. So something like this would be really nice. This is also a very good kind of protection to tech stocks, right? Usually, oil, energy is a little bit stronger when tech stocks are weaker. So if tech continues to be weaker, this would be somewhere to park money in. I like Exxon as well. This is a nice sector to watch. A few other sectors, obviously, that are interesting now, blockchain stocks, to see if there's going to be a reversal here based off the Bitcoin move. I'm watching oversold names like Mara, for example. Any stock that didn't put in a new low on Friday when the rest of the market did is obviously a little bit relatively strong. So something like Mara could be a really nice bounce to the upside. I'll be potentially watching this one. Coin, MSTR, these could be nice bounces as well. Now, a very strong sector is going to be banks. These were holding up super, super strong while the rest of the market was weaker. And you know, they've been holding up really well, specifically XLF. Financials ETF, this held the retest here on Goldman Sachs, could be really nice moves. Even on JPM, right, we have a retest of that previous breakout level and hold. There's a lot of spots that we can use to kind of get long and potentially look for a move higher. So I really like banks higher. I think that's a very nice theme to watch. Another theme that's absolutely super, super strong, credit card companies, right? I think American Express is probably one of the weaker ones, but specifically MA and Visa. So we traded MA last week for a huge move up. We kind of caught that here, came back down. So we stopped out break even, but again, it kind of popped in here on Friday. I think this is going to be a very beautiful continuation move on MasterCard. So this is one of my top watches. I mean, the setup here is just absolutely textbook. It looks like if you get a break over 577, 580, 585, 600 could even come very quickly. Visa is another one, right? These have just been so strong. When a stock moves like almost 1 or 2% off the highs when the market's down like 5 or 6%, that's usually a very good sign of strength, right? When everything is like making new lows, but the stock is holding up, very, very good sign. So I like Visa, I like MasterCard. Those are very, very strong sectors. Some weak sectors to look at. Solar is a really weak one. This company, ARRY, had earnings, and off of that, a lot of these solar stocks were lower. So I like ENPH for potential downside. FSLR could work as well. These could be good short candidates. I'll be watching to see if there's any potential setups there. Some industrial stocks do look pretty good. I think DE would probably be one of the better looking stocks. It broke out with a ton of volume here. Now it's setting up in a tight flag. This would be a nice potential move to the upside. RTX made a really nice move to the upside last week. You can watch this one for continuation. So this would be a very strong sector. Healthcare is very, very underrated. If you're not looking to trade healthcare stocks right now, you're missing out on some potential really big moves. Look at AbbVie, for example. This one has been strong for the past like 2 weeks. It's just been nonstop higher after this earnings gap right here. On the weekly time frame, what is it doing? It's breaking out of the weekly base. So, I mean, this has so much upside in my opinion. I wouldn't chase it here at the highs, but look for it to set up somewhere around this level. Look for higher. I would keep these on your watch list. Another one that's very, very beautiful here, Johnson & Johnson, J&J. This is setting up a huge base on the weekly time frame. Look at the weekly time frame on this. It has rejected multiple times at this trend line. But if it can get through this level here, this is going to be like a 30-20% move on the stock, right? And J&J is a pretty slow mover. So if it moves 20-30%, the options contracts on this are going to go absolutely insane. So it's going to be a very, very nice move on that. So watch J&J. That's a really nice one. A lot of potential for higher. I also like LLY. Look at the weekly time frame, another breakout higher. So if you're looking to trade things long, there's a ton of setups, right? Like there's no shortage of setups to the long side. Just watch the market to see where the follow through is going to be. But healthcare, industrials, consumer staples, retail even, there's a lot of sectors that are still holding up very well. These could be very nice moves to the upside. Again, remember, I usually try to look for stocks that are above the moving averages. So even if there's a stock in a sector that's strong, look at the leaders, right? The leaders to me are J&J, AbbVie, LLY. Another really strong name out of healthcare is ABT, Abbott. This one just broke out of a big base as well on the weekly time frame. So there's a lot of these stocks that look very good. These are a few that I like. Another name that really stood out to me was Costco. This one had a ton of volume, held up very well at the 21 EMA. It does have earnings coming up next week, but overall this one could be a nice run-up idea. So I'll be paying attention to it, watching that one. Looks very good to me. Now, some weaker sectors also we talked about, right? Semiconductors, right? Chips. AMAT, for example, super strong, right? AMD, been just an absolute like I don't even know. This thing's like going off a cliff. Just terrible stock, right? These are the types of stocks we want to continue to short. AMD not specifically because it doesn't really have a setup, but something like ARM, for example, right? If ARM breaks this trend line right here, this is going to be a huge move down, right? Like an absolutely huge move down to like $100. And these stocks, something like ARM, could like really get moving. Like these are stocks that really move fast. So I'm not saying short it here at the lows, maybe give it a few more days to set up, but this looks like a really good downside move. I still think SMH is going to be a very nice short as well. I have this one on my focus list. If it rejects like 235, that's a nice looking downside idea. I still think software stocks have been pretty weak, so these ones could be really nice to the downside as well. And following that, that's pretty much it when it comes to sectors. There's a lot of other areas that are pretty interesting as well. I did see a pretty nice theme in insurance companies. So something like Root, ROOT, looks like it can absolutely squeeze. I'm sure you guys have seen this stock or familiar with it. If it breaks over 140, this could be a beautiful move. Something like Lemonade, I'm sure you guys have also seen this stock as well. Super strong. This is the insurance theme, so these are some pretty nice themes to watch. I like these ones for potential upside. All right, guys, so that's pretty much a recap of the overall markets. Now, for the exact stocks that I'm looking to trade, so as always, remember, I might show you like 20 or 30 stocks that do have potential, but I always like to narrow it down to a few stocks that I'm going to trade. Why? Because it's going to be so much easier to execute when you're not looking at 30 different stocks, right? If you're looking at your best setups, it's going to be much easier to trade. So what I'm looking at is MA to the upside, right? MasterCard. This one's a super strong name. Again, we traded it on Thursday, made a nice move off of it, but it came back down. I'm looking to get back in over 577. Reason why? That is going to be the high right here where we rejected twice, right? So we had one rejection, two rejection, and then we closed into this level on Friday. So if we break over this 577 level, we can expect a very big move to the upside because it has this compression here, right? Very similar kind of base to what played out here, right? We had a ton of compression, broke out, boom, huge move, right? So that's kind of what we're looking at for MA. You can also see a ton of volume to confirm. So I like the 590 calls on this one for March 21. I think if it breaks over that level, this is going to be a nice move to the upside. Another long idea is going to be Unity. I like this one a lot. Why? It just got back over the moving averages on the weekly time frame. And on the weekly time frame, you can see it's kind of reclaiming the previous kind of breakdown spot right here. So this could be a nice reversal on the weekly. You have a ton of accumulation volume patterns happening here. Again, this is going to be based on if the market is going to continue to be strong. If the S&P and the Qs can get back over the moving averages, these would be the type of stocks that I would like to long. This one had a nice ignition candle on earnings. Since then, low volume, now setting up a pretty tight flag. If it gets over 26.6, I think it can come back up to $30. So I really like that one as well. Another stock that looks very good to me, HIMS, right? You guys remember this name? It moved literally from like 35 all the way up to 72 in a matter of like a few weeks. Had leaps on this one all the way from like down here, caught a huge move on it. I think it's setting up for a potential big move again. Now, I'm not saying it's gonna come all the way back up to 72, but it could give us a nice pop, right? So what I'm looking for on this, it reclaimed this kind of like 45 level where the weekly ADMA is, but it also retested right at the breakout level from this huge move up, right? So where the big move up started is exactly where it retested and held, right? So usually those are going to be the big levels that are going to spark the move up again. So it held that level, held the 50 EMA. It did tighten up a little bit as well in like a hourly range. So if you look at the hourly, you can clearly see it's kind of been tight at that spot. If it gets through 45.8, I think it easily fills the gap up to $51. So that's at least a 5-point move potential, right? If it can get through 51, it can even come back to this gap here at 57. And kind of push to that area. So I think this is a very good risk reward idea. Stop loss could be somewhere around the 50 EMA or even a little bit tighter depending on how you want to trade this one. But super nice name, was very strong on Friday as well with the rest of the market. So you like to see that for strong stocks. So those are my top 3 long ideas. There's a few more that I like that I'm potentially watching. These are just the ones that I think look the best. Now, for my short ideas, I have a few as well. As always, SMH is going to be on there because it has distribution volume patterns, and NVIDIA just absolutely took a crap on Thursday. So I think there's going to be continuations to the downside there. I do think the bounce that we did see on those names were a little bit of an oversold bounce, but the overall trend should be lower on semi. So what I'm watching is there's a big key level here at 235. I'm looking for a retest there on the daily time frame, right? If it retests this level, rejects, especially with the moving averages coming down, we can take a big short to the downside. Another level to watch is 228. That's going to be previous day's low on Thursday and Friday's kind of candle body low right here. If we get under 228, that could also be another trigger to take it down to 212. But I think this could be a monster short setting up, especially if the market does reject pretty hard going into early next week. I do think there's a lot of downside potential for SMH. Another short idea that I like is Reddit, right? This one's sitting at a very important level. It's kind of bouncing here at this 157 spot right at the 21 EMA on the weekly time frame. On the daily time frame, it's below all the moving averages though. So it's clearly in a big downtrend, but it's consolidated about a few days just sitting right at this spot, right? So what this usually means is price will consolidate at a very important level, but it will kind of take away all these buy orders one by one, right? So as it kind of consolidates and then moves lower, that's kind of like a bear flag setup that would potentially set up. So if it breaks that level, I do think Reddit is in for more downside. It did run a ton off the highs, so it could potentially come all the way back down to like 100. These type of moves have been very common recently. A lot of stocks that have been running a ton, specifically like Palantir, HIMS, TEM, those type of stocks, they're all coming down and kind of reverting back to the mean. So that would be an idea to look at for Reddit. I do think that could be a potential nice short, especially if the market moves lower. And then Netflix could be a nice one as well, right? This is a little bit of a stronger stock, so I don't usually like to short strong stocks. The main reason I'm watching this one is it just has such a clear level to trade, right? It has the gap to fill under 950. It's right at the 50 EMA. If it breaks that spot, it's really going to put in a big downside move at that level. So that's what I'm watching. You guys can see like something like Amazon, for example, when that one broke the 50 EMA, it just absolutely like nuked lower, right? So that's kind of what I'm watching. The 50 EMA is usually a nice spot to look for a potential short. Once price breaks that level, usually a lot of sellers step in and you have a big move to the downside. So pretty much I have 3 longs, 3 shorts to look at for next week. There's a lot of setups out there as well that look pretty good. That don't really have clear triggers. I'll go over a few. First one is ROOT, R-O-O-T. Again, mentioned I really like this one. I think over 140 could be a nice move. Tesla's another one that we should watch for a potential bottom, right? Reason why this 270 level, 273, 280 is just so important. We really kind of pushed through this spot in late or early November after the elections. That's really where the big move started. It's literally down 40% off the highs now, down into this level again. So this could be a really nice spot to bounce. But again, remember, this stock is still in a very big downtrend, right? So I would be a little bit careful with it. Don't be too overeager to get longs, but see if there's a potential bounce opportunity on this, right? That's kind of what I'm watching. The reason why it's not on my focus list is because I want to give it a little bit more time to see how it develops, how it plays out, all that good stuff. Microsoft is another one that I like to the downside as well, right? Look at this big weekly head and shoulders that's forming, right? It has a very key level here at 386. If it breaks under 386, this is going to be probably like one of the best short setups in the market. So I think there's a lot of downside potential for this one as well. AbbVie is another one that I like as well. This is a super nice setup to the upside, right? It's been super strong. Holding above this 204 level, we could look for a potential retest trade into the 204 level to get long. INTC is another strong setup. If semiconductors do end up holding up, this is one that I do think does look good for a potential bounce idea with semis. Reason why it was just so strong the last week. And then previous week, it just didn't pull back a lot with the rest of the market, right? A lot of semi names are all the way down here at the lows, but this one is still holding up really well, forming kind of like a flag here. Volume patterns look very healthy, so I do like that one as well. Another very strong one, TTWO, super strong. Like this is holding at the 80 MA while the rest of the market's super weak. Could have a nice bounce idea to the upside. CVX, another really nice one. We talked about this. And then LMND is going to be the last one. So a lot of stocks to look at, a lot of setups, right? But again, we want to make sure we focus on the best stocks and the leading stocks in the market. Those are the ones we want to pay attention to if the market's going to go up. If the market's going to go down, we want to focus on the weakest stocks in the market so we can trade weakness leaders, right? And we can look to short the stocks that are the weakest. So we'll see what ends up happening tomorrow. Obviously, a lot can change between how futures open between now and then. So far, it looks like we're kind of going to be opening up flat, which in my opinion is the best possible thing we can get, right? I don't want any crazy gap ups or downs. We want to trade the big moves during market hours, not with these big moves happening overnight. So it would be nice if we just open flat, but we'll see what ends up playing out. And yeah, that's pretty much a wrap up of my plan, guys. If you have any questions, any tickers you guys want me to look at, I'll be looking at those now. And before I get into the Q&A, really quickly, just so if anyone wants to hop off the stream, I'm gonna make the announcement that I was gonna make now really quickly. So if you guys remember, we did a 1 month boot camp for TOC members, but also people outside of the Discord. I think it was an absolutely huge success. We had a ton of really good testimonials and people really enjoyed it. So we're probably gonna do another one of these in the future. However, we are opening up the wait list for this today. So if you guys wanna get on the wait list, it's first come, first serve. So you have to get on the wait list right now. I put the wait list in the chat. Whoever wants to get in, if you get on the wait list first, you're probably gonna be picked. If not, probably not. So make sure to get in quick on that. I appreciate the good, the good feedback, guys. I promise I did not pay them for this. But yeah, I dropped it in the free trading chat. So if you guys want to get on the wait list, if you already signed up yesterday, you're already like one of the first people, so you're good. All right, cool guys. Just want to make that announcement out there. If you guys have any other stocks, anything you guys want me to look at, now I'll do all the chart requests and stuff. So I'll go over everything you guys want me to look at. I'm gonna start at the top, make sure I didn't miss anything. Check out Hood, another strong name. Yeah, this one also moves really well with crypto. So remember, like Hood is the second biggest owner of Bitcoin, right? The second biggest holder. So they actually do move really well with Bitcoin. So I think Hood is actually gonna be a really nice long as well. So good that you brought this one up. It looks really nice. I think if it can get back over 52.5, it does look very nice to the upside. Thoughts on nuclear stocks, NNE? I think NNE does look pretty good. I think overall nuclear stocks might not be the strongest right now in terms of sector, but NNE does look pretty good. It looks like it kind of tried to bottom here and then push back higher. If it gets back through the moving averages, it does look good. However, let me explain to you guys something really quickly. When we're looking for stocks to long that got under the moving averages, right? So let's say, for example, you guys know a big part of my strategy is longing stocks that are above the moving averages, right? So let's say, for example, you get a big trend up, you get a pullback into the moving averages catch up, and you have a big move continuation to the upside. But what happens when a stock, let's say, moves up but gets back under the moving averages and now it's below, right? Well, you obviously want to wait for the moving averages to get reclaimed, right? So you can see right here, for example, the stock is rejecting at the moving averages, but we also want to see a pullback into the moving averages. So how I like to buy these stocks is you'll get the move up, it'll move back below the moving averages, it'll pop back above, and then retest, moving averages will get back below price, move up. And that's called a wedge pop, right? So that's how you play a change of trend. You wait for the moving average wedge pop, right? So same thing like on QQQ, on tech, we did break below the moving averages. However, we still didn't get the wedge pop, right? That would confirm a break lower. So why didn't we break lower here, for example, on tech earlier in January? Because we didn't get the wedge pop, right? We just had to move down and then we reclaimed and made a higher low, right? We didn't get any wedge pops on this. However, if let's say, for example, now on tech, we come here, we make a bear flag, we get a wedge pop, this is gonna be a very nice short to the downside. So those are the types of plays that I look for an actual trend continuation. And that's usually when I buy things in the market. Sorry about that little rant, I just wanna make it clear. Those you planning to enter, how do you determine the TP level? So for your targets, you're gonna keep it very simple. You're going to use previous price levels. So look at HIMS, for example, right? What you wanna do off the bat is identify where the key levels are on the stock, right? So for example, I could see a key level right here at 45.8 because we got 1 rejection, 2 rejection, 3 rejection, 4 rejection, right? So that's a key level to watch. Now, the next key level after that that's higher is gonna be probably somewhere around this high right here, and somewhere around this spot right here, because we have support and then we have resistance, and then we also have this high right here, right? So now you have a few targets to watch, right? You have 1, 2, 3 targets to look at for a potential move up. So let's say if we got long here, these are going to be your targets. So always look at previous price levels as your targets, because those levels are going to probably be used as resistance. So this would be a good spot to start taking profits at in case the stock reverses, right? Because you don't want to get you don't want to go from having a ton of profits to going back to break even. So you want to trim as you go. Check out ACHO. Nice base. ACHO. I don't see any thing on this. Maybe it's wrong ticker. Or did you put ACHR maybe? Potentially. A lot of these, if it is ACHR, please correct me if I'm wrong and it's something else. A lot of these aerospace stocks did put in a really nice reversal. So it does look very, very good to the upside. If it reclaims that spot and stays above like this $8 level, it does look like a really nice reversal. It's brewing back up to $12. How do you read the volume on HIMS? The volume on HIMS is very kind of volatile because of how much news and stuff it had, right? So how I would interpret this is it had a very big volume breakout, but then after earnings, it had a very big downside kind of ignition candle. But since then, overall, it does look like it held up very well, right? So it had a ton of volume on this day, but it closed on a doji, right? So to me, what's more important is how the stock closes, and that would confirm kind of what the volume is doing. So if there was a ton of volume and the stock closed all the way at the lows, that would be very bearish, right? But since the stock had a ton of volume, but closed basically neutral, and then the next few days it's moving up, that's usually a pretty good indication that buyers did step in and kind of overpower sellers, or at least kind of mitigate some of the selling pressure. So to me, this looks like something that could potentially move up. Next candle will probably give us a little bit more of an understanding of what's happening. If it breaks this level here with a ton of volume and closes at the highs, I think that's going to be a bullish indication. Let's say if it rejects really hard, closes all the way at the lows with a ton of volume, that's going to be a pretty bearish indication. So from there, that's how you would kind of interpret it. What do you make of the ER reaction on HIMS? Just curious because of the bear gap post ER and lack of gap fill. I think the earnings reaction was like a pretty big overreaction, to be honest. I think their earnings were actually pretty good. It's just a lot of the theme right now was to sell like a lot of these big names that move, like Palantir, TEM, right? Those type of names that really made like big moves over the last month. The theme was to kind of sell those off. So I think that's what the market was doing. But I think overall the earnings were there. So if the market does bounce, that could be a nice potential move to the upside. How do you determine take profits for stocks at all-time highs? You would look at the stock and then use a Fibonacci retracement tool. So if you go on TradingView, you can use the Fib retracement tool right here. What I like to do for this is measure the low to the high of the base, and then you'll get some algo targets. So these Fibonacci levels are going to be like algorithm base levels that algorithms usually like to trade at. And these will usually be some nice levels to take targets at and profits at. So I have the 0.27, 0.618, and then the 1-to-1. Usually the 1-to-1 measured move target, so the -1 extension right here, is going to be your main target for the base, right? So that's going to be a 1-to-1 move, measured move basically of this potential breakout that's going to occur. Thoughts on Lunar? Yeah, so again, aerospace stocks did look pretty decent off the reclaim. I would say this one's probably one of the weaker ones though. I like RKLB, ASTS, ACHR maybe a little bit more. But overall in the weekly, it could potentially be trying to kind of reverse. It might need a little bit more time to, kind of hold up right at the 50 EMA. It has to come up 11.3. So wait for it to kind of set up and show you that it wants to bounce, and from there we could get a nice move to the upside. Ali short, if it breaks under this spot, yes, but just remember banks have been very, very strong. So I don't know if I'd want to really short banks. Maybe let's see KRE, which can be like regional banks. Regional banks have been a little bit weaker. So like, XLF and regional banks are different sectors. Similar but different, but I think overall, if it rejects, let's say this level here, and then breaks the low for like a bear flag move, that could be a nice short, yeah. H puts below 137.5. Let's see. Yeah, that looks good. It has a little bit of a bear flag look to it. It looks like it kind of put in a bear flag move similar to this on like Monday. So if it does break under that low, I do like that. That's really nice. SO to the upside. Yeah, that one looks good as well. If it breaks over $90, could be really nice. I like both of those. Sean, can you export that watch list for us on TradingView that we can import? Yeah, I think I put it in the chat, but I'll put it in again if you want. I just linked it. CSCO. This one has been a stronger name. It's in the telecom sector, which has been really strong. Like if you look at like T-Mobile, AT&T, all those stocks have been holding up very well. So there could be potential for upside on this. It's setting up in a very kind of big flag here. If it gets back through like, let's say 65.3, it could make a nice move up to like 65. So that could be a nice one to look at. BROS, Bros. Another very strong one. It had a PG, so a post-earnings gap kind of set up here. It looks like it's kind of forming a wedge now. It does look very good. If it can get through, I would say like 79.2, you could look for a move back up to 86. So very strong. I would like to see a little bit more volume on the buy side, but it does look good. UPS. This has potential to fill the gap. But these are not like my favorite trades. This is usually really not my style, but it's at a very key level. I would tell you that for sure, like right here at 120. If it doesn't break 120, it could potentially reject. So that's something I'd watch for. If it gets over 120, you could look for that gap fill to play out. APP. I think this one could be a nice reversal idea just for like an overextension reversal play because it did undercut this level here on like the short report. It held up and then it kind of trying to move back up. So maybe you could trade it back up to 363. But again, this would just be like a short-term bounce idea. This wouldn't really be like a full-blown like move back up to the highs because it doesn't really have a setup on it yet. But it could be a nice reversal back to the moving averages for like an overextension pop. MMM. Very, very strong stock. Looks like it's ready to break out higher. You could see it's on the weekly time frame. It's breaking through a very key spot right here, and it's probably going to move all the way up to the all-time high. Honestly, it's been in a very strong uptrend, and it's been super, super, super strong. Like over the last 3 days specifically, huge hammer here off the 50, just kind of pushing higher. I would look for a retest of like the previous breakout level for a potential entry on it. If you're not in already, if you are in, you can look to target like up in a 165. LLY, I do think LLY looks very good to the upside for continuation. It's been super strong, holding up well. If it gets through 925, it could run up to like 935 and then up to the all-time high at like 960. Is there a link to your stock screener? The issue with that is that I can't really export the stock screener on TradingView. So I just have like I have a picture of my settings for it. Because you can't actually like link the scanner itself. Who was teaching the bootcamp? It was me and the coaches. Why wouldn't CVX be a top of the bill watch for you? CVX, it is a top of the bill watch for me. I do have it on my watch list. So like if you look at my trades, I have it on ready stocks. I already have my alert set on it, so I'm watching it for a break over 159. If it breaks over 159, we could see like 160, 163. So I am really watching that one as well. LMT. This one I probably wouldn't want to be long just because it's in such a big downtrend. I probably wouldn't want to look at this one. Short, I don't really see anything on it as well to the downside. It doesn't really have like a full-on bear flag yet, so I'd probably just disregard that one. NTRA short break below 149.2. Let's check that out. Yeah, that was a nice one. That's a nice one to the downside. So these would be my like favorite type of downside trades, right? So you have rejection, and a big base that's kind of like curling from the upside. These are like my favorite moves down because there's a very clear trigger for it. So like under 150, it's gonna be a nice short. So definitely one of my favorite stock setups. Meta, Let's take a look. I think Meta could potentially be a nice reversal idea if the market does hold up. It has held this level here previously twice. So it has a hammer here from Friday. It's right at the 50 EMA as well. It could potentially start to kind of form like a wedge here and then kind of pop out of the spot. So that's kind of what I'd be watching. Confirmation of the breakout would probably be like over 683. CBX, we went over that one. It looks fantastic, over 159. Tesla, we went over this one as well, but look for like a bounce back, maybe up to 323 or the 80 MAs, the 80 MA at least for a potential bounce idea. Can you talk about how you hold during a drawdown? Can you ask the question specifically? Because I'm not really sure what you mean by that. BP, this could be a nice one for a trade on oil if like XLE holds up and the oil ETF holds up. It looks like it's holding at like the 21-day here. If it sets up a little bit more, maybe gets back through 33.5, it could pop back up. My bad, I meant AHCO. Okay, got you. I was on the wrong one. This one looks like it has an ignition candle on the daily. On the weekly, it actually looks pretty good. Looks like maybe a potential like stage 1 base breaking out here. If it gets through like 11.8, it could run back to like 14. That would be the spot to watch. Thoughts on UPS and WM? UPS, again, I don't know if I love this one just because it's below all the moving averages on the weekly, and it's like right at this key spot 120, but industrials have been strong. WM I really, really like. I actually had this one pop up on my screen. It does look like a very big breakout on the weekly and daily time frame, so this one could continue to run higher. For the boot camp, you have to join the wait list. So we don't just accept anybody. There's a wait list for it, but it's first come, first serve. So if you get on the wait list early, you have a better chance to get accepted. But I posted the wait list again if you didn't see it. ASTS, dude, I really like ASTS. It sucks that it has earnings tomorrow because it looks really good, but this is one that I definitely want to long. So after earnings, I'll definitely be looking for an entry on this one. DOX and UNH. DOX looks very good. It's setting up in a very nice flag here. Might need a little bit more time to kind of push back to the spot here and then set up for a move higher, but it does look like it's setting up within the space, so it could potentially move back up to 85. I also really like the weekly time frame on DOX. Look at the weekly on it. Broke out of a stage 1 base, stage 2 kind of now in a stage 2, kind of retested a little bit here, breaking out. So it looks very, very good. I would definitely keep my eye on it. And UNH could be a potential gap fill idea. It did have a very strong candle here off the lows. It's not really my type of style for a trade, but it could gap fill up to like 498 if it gets through 476. BBAI, this is another one to watch as well. It's retesting this previous breakout level. Very low volume on the pullback, a little bit of higher volume here. It is under the 50 and the 821 though. It might just wait for earnings. So I think maybe see if it pops on earnings. It is up actually a pretty good amount though after hours, 562 already. So it could potentially kind of be breaking out of this range. It is a pretty extended wedge down, but if it holds up, like I'd say at $5, it can run back up higher. Tesla also a large Bitcoin holder in XYZ Square. Yeah. How do you scan stock names and how do you filter them to find the right stocks to keep on your watch list? So it just depends on if the market's going up or down. If we're in an uptrend, I have a long screener, so a breakout screener. This is going to be a screener that I use on TradingView. You can go here and see the settings. So I like to have like market cap over 300 million, relative volume over 1, price over 3, all this stuff. I'll actually just put a screenshot in the chat, so you'll be able to take a screenshot if you want. But yeah, that's how I scan, and then from there, you just want to go through, manually find some of the best setups in the market. That's what I like to do. So this shows you some of the strongest stocks in the market. All you have to do is just decipher which setups you like. So what I like to look for is tight bases, something like MA, right? This is my perfect setup. Something that's setting up in a tight base with a tight flag, very strong sector in the financial sector, leading that sector higher. So it has basically everything I look for. So that would be a pretty nice continuation. What has been your high success rate strat, breakout, retest, flag? So all those are very similar in terms of the actual strategy behind them. The strategy that is the most consistent for me and what I think works the best is just buying breakouts right when they occur. So either if a stock is breaking over a key level to the upside, or if it's breaking under a key level to the downside, buy them right away if there's a ton of volume that confirms the breakout, because most of the best moves in the market usually don't give you a retest, because that's the best move in the market. They lock out a bunch of people. That's why it's such a good move, because a lot of people are kind of caught chasing that move later on. So it kind of adds to the fuel. So that's usually why I enter right away on a break of that structure of the base. But that's usually my highest P&L, my highest P&L strat. You worried at all about longing into the EMAs? Yeah, I am going to be a little bit careful on that. I'd probably, like, the only thing I'd look to really long is some of these strong names, like MA, for example. It was literally strong when the rest of the market was making new lows, so I'd be confident in that one. Meta looks very strong. What's your view? Yeah, I like that one as well. It looks like it's setting up nice. Dell short below 98.27, forming a big daily flag. Yeah, I do like Dell short because, again, it's in the semiconductor sector, so it does look very good to the downside. It could be kind of potentially following through here from like this this trend line. If it breaks under that spot, that would be 98.75. That would be a big continuation move down to like 86.77. Snow, this one has held up really nice, specifically like post earnings. It had really good numbers, and then it kind of gapped up, pulled back with the rest of the market, and then kind of pushed back up higher. I think maybe give it a few more days, and then it could potentially set up in like this base and then break out. But I think it just needs a little bit more time to set up. There's nothing like too clear on it. RKLB, that's a monster candle on Friday. I don't even really know where this came from. Pretty crazy stuff. Gapped down a ton on earnings, and then from there just had a crazy bounce back off this like range. This candle usually tells you a lot, right? If a stock puts in a candle like this, usually the next day and the day after are pretty strong. For example, look at LMND. What did it do? Well, it had a really big gap down, and then the next day it closed all the way at the highs with a ton of volume, and the next day it popped like another 10-20%. So that's usually a very good sign that the stock is very, very strong. There's like a ton of buyers that are coming into this, and all these shorts here are getting squeezed. So that's a potential move for RKLB that could happen. It's still in a big downtrend on the daily, but if it can start reclaiming the moving averages, getting through like the key spots again, it could potentially set back up. So I do think it's a very nice move. You always go small size in positions for an RDR trade just because of the high risk? No, so RDR is actually a very low risk strategy, because usually you're like very close to where the stop is. So it's a very low risk strategy. The reason why I would take it small size is just the reason why I took it small size last week is just because of the fact that I was trading shorter dated cons. So usually the reason why I take less risk is because shorter dated cons have more risk, right? They move a ton. So taking a smaller position gives me a little bit of a better way to manage my risk on those. Do you always go small? Okay, no, I read that. How do you determine option date and strike price entry? So I like to go for the OPEX contracts. Those are usually going to be the ones that aren't marked W on your broker and are on the third Friday of the month. The reason why I like those is because they have the most liquidity. So as someone who has like a bigger account, for me, I need a lot of liquidity to get in and out of options, so that's why I use that rule. It doesn't necessarily have to apply that much if you're only trading like 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 cons or something like that, but always look for liquidity, right? Look for like 50 OI at least if you're trading less than like 10 cons. Look for like 100 volume, right? Even more the better, because the more liquidity there is on the contract, the easier it is to get in and out, and the less you're gonna have to cover the spread, and the more money you save from getting in and out. So that's something I would be looking for. So OPEX cons, and then for your strike, I usually like to be like, as a rule of thumb, I like to go 1 strike out the money usually. So if I'm trading something like RKLB, if I want to play calls on this, I'll go like 21 call because it's trading at 20.49. However, use that with like a grain of salt, because something like Tesla, for example, I would probably go a little bit farther out the money just because it's a stock that's at like a higher price, right? So like stocks that are trading like over $100 or $200, usually I'll go like 2 or 3 expirations out the money. The reason why I like to trade OTM options is because I'm a breakout trader. So usually you get a very quick move after breakouts. So you get in the money very quickly if the breakout does follow through. With HIMS against the key level above 821, or sorry, above plus 821 above, could you look for a top set RDR to the downside? Yeah, you could potentially if there's a ton of volume on that and the market moves lower. Join the call just now. Can someone please tell me what stocks you discussed? Any good ones to watch this week? So the good thing is it's going to be recorded and posted. So if you missed any of this, you'll be able to watch it. What do you think of Chewy and Grab? Let's take a look. Chewy actually looks pretty good. It's back above the 821 and 50 EMAs, setting up under this big spot here at 37.5. If it gets through that level, I could see like 39 and potentially 40. And for Grab, it looks like a lot of consolidation here is probably going to occur. It did have like this kind of wonky price action on earnings and stuff. So maybe give it a few more weeks to set up. It just broke out of a big stage 1 base though. So this does look very good for potential upside in like the coming weeks, I would say. Sign up to get the info, would automatically charge. Okay, no, so the wait list is just a wait list. Like it's literally just a wait list. So you'll get more information usually by email. We're still even really deciding if there's going to be another bootcamp or not. But this is just for people who are really interested. You could get on the wait list early and you'll have a higher chance of getting in. But it's just a wait list, so all the information will come in via email. Can you please look at BA? Yes, so BA does look pretty good for puts, I would say. Especially if it stays under the 50 EMA. It does look like if it gets under like the spot here at 173, it could potentially move back down to like 164 to me. CAH, what I think of the setup? Very, very nice setup in a very strong sector as well. Has been very strong, trending to the upside. Nice volume on Friday. It does look really good for continuation higher. Yeah, Jad, I'll catch you, bro. And tell Yusuf, bro, he needs to come back, man. For that 600 level on SPY, what time frame do you watch the indices on to confirm a breaking of that level to go long? What are you looking to confirm a break above that level? So ideally, a daily time frame would really confirm it. However, you could just look at the smaller time frames during like the market open just to see what the market's doing around that level, right? So a lot of times you can like go down on the smaller time frames, see how the market reacts to that level, right? So what you're looking for is, let's say for example, this is the level we're watching. You're looking for to see if you get like a long wick to the upside and a rejection, right? Or if price is able to close above, stay above, hold above, right? These are kind of ideas of what the market is going to do. If it stays above, holds above, it's probably going to move higher. If it rejects with a long wick on a ton of volume, that's usually going to be a rejection idea. So that's how you would kind of look at it. I usually give it like a few minutes, maybe an hour or so to see what the market's doing, especially at key levels. For example, you could see when the first test of the key level down here on the S&P before the big move down on Thursday, we actually held, right? So we had like a retest of the low. We actually had a very nice hammer. But from there, the whole day, price just kind of faded and then it moved lower into this level, which is why I decided to short right here because we had a lot of momentum going into the level again, and it looked like we were going to get a big breakdown. You also had a ton of volume to confirm that the breakdown was going to occur. So give it a little bit of time, watch that key level, see what it does, and then from there you can go and make a decision. How do I feel about MO? I think this one actually looks very good. It looks like it's setting up for potentially a break of the all-time high, if I'm not wrong. It's all-time high. Yeah, it is the all-time high. So over like 56.7, it does look like it has continuation potential. Starbucks. Starbucks is a nice one as well. Very, very strong stock. On the weekly time frame, it's like right at the all-time high. So watch here to see what it does. If it breaks over the all-time high, 116.4, it could continue to run up to like 120. So that would be the next level to watch. Intel, we went over that one, but I do like it. You could see it setting up in like a nice flag here. If the markets do end up holding up, specifically like SMH and semiconductors, I think there's a lot of upside potential in INTC. Marvel, I think this is on the weaker side. I would say if the markets are weak, it would be one potentially to look to play lower, but it is at a very, very key spot, right? It's retesting the big breakout from like the 2-year base here. So this is a huge spot for it to hold. It's also right at the 50 weekly EMA, so it's a very big bounce spot. If it holds, you have a very good probability of a move higher. If we get back through the lows, you could look for a short down, specifically if the market's weaker. NVO. This one could potentially be a nice gap fill idea. Kind of like what I said, I usually like to look for longs on reclaims when they move up and then kind of come back down or retest and kind of wedge pop, which it's kind of doing, right? It's not giving you like the longest wedge down, but it is kind of giving you a wedge pop. So it could be nice. I would like to see more volume. But if it gets over like 93, it could fill the gap back up. JD and Baba. I like JD still. I was long this one on Thursday to potentially look to get through this level, but it kind of gapped down. I think it's still holding up really, really well. So it looks like if it stays above this spot, it could potentially move back through like 43.7, get back to $47. It does have earnings coming up though, so that's one thing I would watch for. And then Baba, same idea. I think this one will hold up. Maybe it needs some more time to consolidate. Like look at the move that it put in, right? Just absolutely huge. So ideally, maybe it consolidates a little bit, forms like some sort of flag and then breaks out. I'll be watching Baba though to see if we can get some longs on it as well. DAL to the downside. Potentially on it. I don't like love it though because it doesn't have that much consolidation within like a specific spot, right? Like it doesn't have like a clear level to me. Maybe if it gets like through this level right here, 59, it could look good, but I don't really love like the fact that it has this long wick. So I usually like a very clean level. So like a good example maybe would be something like Netflix, just so I can show you the distinction. It has a very clear level, right? Like it has like 3 rejections right at this spot. So if it breaks, it's very easy to tell that it's actually breaking down. However, it does potentially look good down to the downside. How do you determine options? I already answered that. How do you find how far out the call should be? Is it safe to just do 3 weeks out at a time, or is there a way to check how fast the stock will move? Yeah, so there's something called an ADR. That's the stock's average daily range. So you could see right here, you could see like the ADR percentage. So that's how much the stock moves on average, right? So if it moves 2%, that's how much it usually moves on average. So you can calculate how much it's going to move if it breaks out. Usually a strong breakout will be double the ADR. So if the stock's ADR is like 2.6, it'll probably move 5% on a strong breakout. And that would help you calculate, how much the stock's going to move. In terms of when we're gonna, or what expiration we're gonna be buying, it all depends on the trade we're taking. So the bigger the setup, the bigger the base, the more time you want to take on it. So for example, if we have like Netflix, this is like a base from January. So from January until February, so about 2 months. Then on this one, we'll probably take 2 or 3 weeks out, right? But if we have a setup that only has like about like a week or 2 of consolidation, we might just only need about like next week contracts, right? Because the move usually plays out based on how big the setup is. So that's usually how I determine which cons I'm going to trade. But to be safe, yeah, 2 to 3 weeks out is pretty good. Can you show an A+ setup and execution? I'll show you one to the short side that we took last week. MSCR to the downside, beautiful base. It has a big distribution block right here off of this big sell-off on the capitulation extension. And then since then it was trading near the lows, right? It was trading below the moving averages. It broke the key trend line on a ton of volume, and this trigger level, I got short right here as it broke that spot. Moved super nice under the previous base low right here, and then, that's a huge move. So this was the execution I took on this. The downside, a good setup right now to the upside, I would say probably one of the best ones is MA. This is a pretty A+ setup to me. It's setting up really well. And this is another one that I traded on Thursday. That was really nice. It ended up coming back down, but you can see on Friday, pushed back to the high. So if this breaks like 577, this could be another beautiful one to take. So if it breaks 577 with a ton of volume, I would just grab calls on it, look to trade up to 580. Intel, we went over that one, looks good. Hey, sorry about drawdown. I mean, when you're in options positions and they're negative or red, how long do you hold for? Do you have a mental stop, or do you treat cons like a lotto? Never treat contracts like a lotto, because you're never going to make money doing it that way. You always have to have established risk. So before any trade I even put on, right, I always have a stop loss that I'm going to respect. So before I get into the trade, I have to find a stop loss that makes sense. What I like to use is a key level. Why? Because that's going to give you high probabilities for continuation. If the stock doesn't hold the key level, for example, let's say MA, the key level is going to be right here. If it doesn't hold it, it's probably going to move lower. So why would we want to hold the stock and put on more risk than we need to when we can always just re-enter if the stock gets back through the level? So I always like to stop loss and actually stick to my stop loss and plan. And that's really what actually turned me profitable, because I was very good at technical analysis. I just never had a good strategy or plan that I followed. And once I implemented a plan, I actually stuck to stop losses and my rules. That's actually when I started to become profitable and make money. So always want to have a plan, always want to have a stop loss before you get into the trade, so you're not sitting there looking for one during the trade, and know what the probabilities are of that trade, depending on where your stop and where your targets are. Are there any trades that you take where you stop and first DP are not at least 1.5R or not even? The stop is bigger than the first DP. Okay, so that usually never happens. The stop cannot be bigger than the first DP. I need to at least have an over 1R, or else like the trade just makes no sense. So what I usually do is, in that case, if I want to use a stop loss that's really low, for example, so let me show you actually an idea on how I would explain this, right? So let's say, for example, I wanted to use this low on MA tomorrow, right? So let's say if I got long here, but I wanted to use this as the stop loss, right? And the first target, the one that makes sense, was less than a 1R. So it'd be like 0.7, right? Instead of using this as a stop loss, what I would do is I would go down to the smaller time frames and look for a different level, right? If I really wanted to take this trade, I need to make it make sense in terms of my rule set. So I would use something like this instead, maybe here, because you could see this is a very important level that price broke out above, and then that's where the big move started. It was also resistance a few times. So if it comes back down, I would want to hold that spot. If it doesn't hold, it'll probably move lower. So now that's going to be my stop loss. So now you could see it ends up fitting my criteria, and it's an over a 1R trade. So it needs to be at least over 1R, or else you have to fix your stop, because it doesn't make sense to trade that way. Do you automate orders from TradingView? No, because I trade options, so not possible. What finally made you flip the switch in your head to change from emotional trading to systematic trading? Just being tired of losing all the time and making the same mistakes. I think at some point it just gets very exhausting that you know you're doing the wrong thing, and you just continue to do it without like fault, right? So the moment you start to realize that the quicker you change your habits and actually follow what you're going to do, the quicker you're going to end up actually making money in the market, and just knowing that it's all up to you. Netflix monthly shows inverse hammer. Would you look at monthly chart? Daily below 950 looks good for downside. Yeah, I like that one for downside too. That's exactly a one that I'm watching as well. It does look very overextended on the monthly. Biggest thing you change, lesson learned to become profitable, just like what I just said, right? Stop making the same mistakes you know you're making and the ones that you know are costing you your profitability. For me, for example, my biggest mistake was not actually having a plan or even following one. So even if I did have a plan or I had a stop loss, I would literally go against it and, you know, average down on options. That's like the worst thing you can do. So first thing, if you're trading options, never average down on options until you have proper risk management and discipline. It's only going to blow your account. Like it's a given, right? To me, averaging down is like the worst thing you could do. Even with me, I have my risk management in place now after 4 years, but I still never average down because it's such a bad habit to get to with options. With equity, I could say yes, average down. There's more leeway. There's easier ways to manage risk. There's a different plan. But with options, it's not very good strategy to have. Again, if you have proper risk management and it works for you, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. But for people who are struggling with blowing their accounts, having bad risk management, averaging down is going to be the worst thing to do. So immediately cutting that out helped me out a ton. Immediately cutting out weeklies and 0 DTEs and trading those with size helped me out a ton. And then second thing is following my stop loss. If I have a stop loss and I don't follow it, I spank myself. CME. This one looks pretty good. Looks like it's setting up for a big breakout higher through this 253 spot. What do you think of ACS earnings, and what do you do if if you miss a small target breakout price, but you think it could still have room up. So for earnings, I'm not really sure what's going to happen. It's pretty much 50-50. When you miss a breakout, the worst thing to do is to chase, so don't do that. What you're going to look for is a retest or a continuation setup. So for example, let's say if earnings weren't here on ASTS and I missed this breakout right here, instead of chasing here at the highs, what I would do is wait for it to set up exactly what it's doing right now, right? So wait for it to set up in a base like this and then move up. Same thing with HIMS, right? Look at HIMS. Imagine I missed this breakout right here. I'm not chasing it here, right? At this point, you're just kind of gambling. What I would do, wait for it to come back down, retest the breakout level, buy it here, you get a nice move up, right? So always wait for the retest if you miss, never gamble, chase stuff, that's just gambling, right? How do you know if something is in a stage 1 base or stage 3 base? For example, look at AEP on the weekly. Well, stage 1 base has to come off after a stage 3 decline. It has to come after a big stage 2 upside move, right? So you would know by where the stock goes. So this one was clearly not in a stage 2. It was not in a stage 3 because it didn't have a huge stage 2 yet, right? So this would be a pretty good example of actually like a stage 2. This was stage 2. This could have been the stage 3 decline into the stage 4, and then this was stage 1. Now it's potentially in another stage, stage 2, right? So usually it's very common after a big run up. So look at the difference in like SMH, for example. This is clearly a stage 2 on SMH, right? Look at the way that it moved, just absolutely huge move. So now we can assume potentially we have a stage 3. However, you don't know until the stock confirms, right? For all we know, SMH can continue to move higher. This can continue to just be flags that move higher. So sometimes you just have to let the market confirm it for you and just trade it based on what the price action is telling us. SMCI, that one is kind of coming back down a little bit into the weekly EMAs. It was a little bit weaker this last week, so I am going to be cautious on it. But at the 50 EMA, it could potentially be a nice bounce spot, like $39. Tesla looks good for a bounce. How do you determine SL level on options? Because there's time decay and probably be out the money. Well, you would estimate it based on how much the cons traded at previous price levels. So let's say, for example, if the contract was like a certain price at low of day and that's going to be your stop loss, you can kind of get an idea of what those contracts are going to be worth. Of course, you have to make sure that you're including the fact that, again, like there's time decay and stuff like that. So you'd probably usually kind of estimate like 5 or 10% less if it does reach that level. I like to have a little bit of a buffer level and do that myself. And you can also use an options calculator. Every broker offers it, so you can kind of see what those contracts are going to be worth if that level is hit. For all the bootcamp information, just fill out the waitlist and you're going to have all the information come if we do it. If you trade on Robinhood, how do you know on the contract you buy where is the low of day to then set your stop loss there? You could see what the low of the day is on the contracts on the broker. I'm not like totally familiar with Robinhood. I mainly use it for like long-term investments, not really options, but I'm sure there's a way to see it. You just have to go on like the options quote and then you'll be able to see what the low of day is. However, just keep in mind, we are using low of day on the stock, not the options contract. So I usually use the low of day based off the stock. So for example, I use the low of day on MA. I don't use the low of day on MA options, right? So they might be a little bit different because of the decay and stuff. When the market is trending up, do you only buy calls with strong stocks, or do you also look at weak stocks or puts? Only buy calls. For example, in 2024, I didn't really short anything. The only times I was short in 2024 was when we were below the moving averages, right? So here and maybe here. Because we're in such a strong trend, there's no reason to look for downside stocks unless you're below the moving averages. So only when you start downtrending. Thoughts on app? It could be a nice overextension move to the upside. Thoughts on coin? I mean, we'll have to see what ends up happening with the way that crypto stocks are gapping up because of the Bitcoin move. But overall, it could kind of pop back up to like 240. Apple, I really like the hammer on this one from Friday. It was also strong while the market was weaker. This one has been moving kind of weird, but overall, if it holds up and the market holds up as well, if it gets back through like 247, it might have a potential to see the highs. J&J needs to breathe a bit and move sideways, but before it really breaks out. Yeah, I think so. What would be the next target for coin? Probably like 240. Tesla would probably be like around 300 or 310. NIO breaking out and retest. Let's see. Yeah, NIO potentially. I don't love that it's so weak under the moving averages, but it does look interesting. A lot of the Chinese EV companies did move pretty well recently, so it could be one to watch. Nike. I do like Nike for potential reversal trade. It does look like a double bottom here on the weekly. It needs to get through the 50 EMA on the weekly, so always see where the 50 weekly EMA is. You can see this one's been really struggling at that spot. Every time it tests it, it moves lower. So it needs to get over that spot, but once it does, it'll be able to move back up. The WD, this looks strong. It looks like it can run up to 12.7. SYK, yeah, over 394 could work, 393. HWM, looks like a stronger stock, aerospace stock, so that's been a pretty decent theme. It's held up pretty nicely. Wow, that's actually a really, really strong stock with a ton of volume. If it stays above like 136, I could see it running back up to 140. WGS over 105.4. Yeah, that looks nice. It's not the tightest here on the right side, but it does look good. Like if it gets to that spot, it could run back up to the highs. What time frame do you use to enter your trades? Usually the 5 and 15 minutes are going to be my entry time frames. Is there any way to know if the break of the level is not going to RDR and actually follow through with the break? I mean, it just will stay below that the previous day's low, right? Or if it breaks out to the upside, it will stay over the previous day's high, so it won't break under that spot. Does Yusuf use a different strategy? No, Yusuf uses a very similar strategy. He obviously kind of like tailored it to his own, but I did mentor Yusuf, so he uses the same strategy that I use. But again, everyone tailors a strategy to themselves and their personality. I always recommend to learn off of really good traders, but always kind of tailor the strategy to yourself, because everyone has different personalities. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. So always tailor your strategy towards your strengths and weaknesses. How did you stop over and revenge trading? Just kind of stepping away from the screens. I think a good thing to do is like have a time where you're not on the screens during the market. So that usually for me is about like 11 o'clock because usually that's slower hours in the market, right? After like lunch hours happen. I usually like to step away. That way I'm not always going to be looking for a trade. That keeps me from over trading. And then just having a focus list. That way, if nothing triggers, I don't take anything. So it keeps me very disciplined. The breakout scanner is how to scan for stocks video is different than the one that you just posted. You change something. There might be just like minor differences just because some of them might be like a little bit older than others, but very similar, I would say. Probably just the screener is a bit different because they added like a new update on TradingView. Do you usually enter the option straight after it breaks out, or will you wait? Usually I'll wait the first 5 minutes of the market open, but if it breaks out after the first 5 minutes, I'll enter, specifically if it has volume. I took Cisco calls on Wednesday on the ADMA daily retest while flagging. Would you consider that a good trade? CSCO on Wednesday. Well, not necessarily a great trade because you're kind of guessing, right? Like you're not waiting for the break to actually happen. But it does have a decent like risk to reward with risking the low. But something like this hammer here, I would like more because it is confirming to you that there's a lot of strong buyers coming in off that spot. That's something that I usually like to look for, or at least like a break of the level for a move higher. RTX puts, bro, I would not be shorting this. I mean, it's just really strong, right? Like I don't see a reason to short strong stocks. How do you deal with large spreads? Like on last Friday, JD's con spread was about 10% as it broke 42 level. Well, you just if a stock has too large of a spread, just don't trade it, or look for more liquid contracts. Usually, the most liquid contracts are going to be around OPEX, but check to see the different strikes and see which cons are more liquid. The more OI, more volume, they're going to be less spready. So that way you can avert being in a very spready option. And if you can avoid it, you could just trade equity, right? So don't trade options. Meta looks really good. It looks like it's setting up for higher. TMUS has a similar setup like MA. Oh yeah, you're right. This does look really good. It's also been a very strong stock, so definitely want to put on watch. Actually, I really like this one. Put on my watch list. Thank you for that. When I'm looking to enter a break of a base, should I consider long wicks like this one, the daily or weekly? What I'm looking at, level to enter at? It just depends. I would always say it's like just depending on what you like to see. For your example, you're looking at CME, so I would probably use the high. Yeah. If you missed this breakout right here, or if you didn't catch it on this entry, the next one would be the high. Why look for calls when market is below EMAs? Because you're ready to play both sides, right? If we do get above the EMAs, for example, over the next few days, you can look to play things to the upside. So I'm prepared for either side. I'm looking for the good setups on anything in the market. ZS, this one doesn't really have much of a setup to me. On the weekly, it still looks like it's consolidating. It bounced off the 50 weekly EMA, but on the daily, it doesn't look that good. It's below the moving averages. Looks a little bit weak on the weaker side. AI for daily breakout retest. AI. Ooh, this one looks really weak. What are you looking for in this? I'm not really sure. It might hold this level here at the lows, but there's not really much of a setup on it. It looks like it's just breaking down really big off this spot. What do you think about the break and retest strategy on smaller time frames for day trades? Yeah, that could work. If you get the retest, it's high probability and low risk, so could be something to look at. C looks like it's holding this key level here at the lows, $77. If it continues to hold, gets back over 80, it could run back up to 84. When you're journaling trades and you trim multiple contracts, do you combine all the percentages for each trim together to note down what percent you gained for that one trade? Well, the journal usually just tells me, because I use TradeZella, so it'll just tell me like what the actual P&L is. Did you trade equities before options as a beginner? How long did it take for you to become profitable? I actually started with options. Weirdly enough, I think most people start with some like equities or Forex, crypto, stuff like that. I actually started with options because I found out about them on like social media, on TikTok and stuff, and through friends who were like trading the same thing. So I started with options. I got a little bit into equities after like the first year because I didn't really have that much success with options because I didn't really know what I was doing. I kind of learned from some of the best traders in the world. After like a lot of losses, I was kind of like, okay, what do the best traders do? I want to learn from them. So I looked at like traders like Qual McGee, William O'Neill, some of like the legends, and most of them were trading equities. So I kind of started to use that a little bit. I just had a smaller account at the time, so I thought options would fit me a little bit better. And then I started kind of molding my strategy around that strategy, but with options. So it is a little bit different because I am using options for most of my trades. I do still trade equity here and there on specific stocks that don't really have that good of an options chain. But it took me around like 2 years to become profitable consistently. Finally, I have the day off tomorrow. Excited to live trade with you. Yes, sir. I'll see you guys in the live trading. What if you just write on Google Sheets? That's what I do. Yeah, so you can calculate how much the trims kind of like came together. You look at option flow with services like Cheddarflow or TradeDidix. So I don't really watch option flow much. However, we do have an options flow analyst in the Discord. His name is AP. He posts some like really, really good flow. So what he does is like, he'll find all the good flow and just kind of post it for me. So instead of having to go through all the flow, he'll just kind of sort it and find the ones that look the best. So I use that. When you post trades in the paid Discord, are they more swing trades or day trades? I'm curious how you alert. You have to be on Discord. I'm not sure about the last part, like what that means, but for the alerts are usually swing trades. In this market, maybe a little bit more day trades. That like I try to get into swings, but sometimes like the stocks will just move really quick, so they'll end up being day trades. But every swing trade starts with a day trade, right? You never know if you're gonna want to hold the stock overnight. If you intend to swing, doesn't necessarily mean you have to. So it just depends on the market and like what how the market's moving and stuff. When can I buy shares in Sean Capital? Hopefully in like 2 or 3 years. I would be interested in making a fund. I am really like, I'm super young, so I don't really have like a reason to do it right now. I'm kind of enjoying my time just trading on my own and stuff. But later down the line, I'll definitely be interested in managing some money in a bigger account and stuff. Option Greek's important for you or just charts? Option Greeks are super important because we are trading based off the option. That's like our main investment vehicle. So yeah, it is important. Even if indices are not strong, but the setup you have is very strong, why do you enter them and just size smaller? Or sorry, why don't you enter them and just size smaller? See, a lot of times your trigger levels are broken on your focus list, but you don't enter even though the name is strong, name and sector. A lot of times I'll just miss the setup, right? Like I'm not perfect, so I can't always catch the setups. So if you see me miss stocks on my focus list, sometimes I'll just miss it. Sometimes I won't be looking, or I won't be like that eager to trade. It really just depends on how I'm feeling for the day. Like, you know, like I don't know if I want to be long, for example, the market when it's a little bit shaky. I'm looking to see what the market's doing and stuff. So every day is changing. Every day I'm seeing different things in the market that are kind of causing me to do different things. I think that's something you'll build over time. It's called like market intuition. You'll see stuff that you want to see in the market to go long. You'll see stuff in the market that make you be a little bit more hands off. There's data, things like that. So there's a lot of different things to pay attention to, but it's just stuff that you'll pick up on as you go and kind of build out. But yeah, please manage my money. I don't do that yet. Maybe in the future. Just make sure don't fall for any like the copy trading scams or anything like that, because I don't do that stuff. Jimmy Butler trade, so far pretty big W, but we'll see. I'm a big Warriors fan, so. Are you still trading with the 250K account? No, I'm sized a lot smaller now. I'm closer to 100 at this point. I'll probably size back up if we get a very strong market. Walmart. Walmart looks interesting. It did gap down a lot on earnings and kind of ran back to the 50 here. Got back to the 50, held up pretty nicely, some pretty good volume. If it gets back through like 98, it could fill the gap up to 102. So it does look pretty decent. All right, guys. I think that's pretty much gonna wrap it up. Was I mentored as a beginner? I was not personally mentored by anyone. A lot of the stuff that I did was like self-taught. However, I do have people that I do look up to as mentors that I, kind of followed and studied from, but they didn't personally mentor me. Like I wasn't really mentored by anyone. So a lot of self-studying. Awesome, guys. Hope everyone had a great